How's it going, everybody? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is the Monday after Christmas, December the 29th. Hope everybody had a great holiday. Hope you got to eat all your cookies. You got everything you wanted from Santa this year. Hope, most importantly, you got some time to relax, to kind of back off from the world, hang out with the fam, trade fun stories, enjoy the time that you don't get most of the rest of the year. I had a great one. Got way too many cookies, but not really worried about that right now. I'll make up for that in a week or two, or probably in a month or so, whenever the Bills are eliminated from the playoffs. So, got a lot to get to as always today. We will talk about Bills and Eagles, a whole host of topics that had Bills fans talking about that one. The 2-point conversion, was it the right call? Josh Allen's game, which in a word was no bueno. It's a Spanish word. It's actually 2 words, but whatever. We will also talk about the Sabres today. And we will, as always, on a Monday, tell you about something weird, unusual in the weekend of sports with, you see this, Rachel Liebert will join me later on in the show. But let's start with Bills and Eagles. And let's start right at the end with the 2-point conversion. And I'll tell you what, on the field, when I was watching the game and all of us on the sideline, we're talking about this play, about what do you do if the Bills do score and tie the game, or have a chance to tie the game, get within 1, do you kick? And my initial answer was, you are dominating this game, you kick. You go to overtime. You own this game. The Eagles were doing nothing against the Bills offensively. Literally nothing. They had 0 completed passes in the second half of an NFL game in the year of our Lord 2025. When have you ever heard of that before? Now, some of that is because the Eagles like to go into a bag and don't do anything when they have a lead late in the game. That's been their MO this year. But it's also because the Bills defense was playing really well. So you are in absolute control of this game. As it turned out, you have now scored touchdowns on your last 2 offensive possessions. Go to overtime, get your 3 and out that you've been getting every single possession pretty much since halftime, and win the game. But the more I thought about it, and the more you look at the situation, primarily the situation at kicker, Michael Badgley is a guy who is the Bills' 3rd choice for kicker this year, right? Remember, they started out with Tyler Bass. He had an injury. Then he had to go find Matt Prater. The Bills, frankly, got super lucky that they grabbed a kicker kind of off the couch right before the season started, and he's been as talented as Prater has been. Now you're on the backup to the backup, the 3rd choice. And while Michael Badgley did have a job for most of the year with the Colts, the reason he was available is because he missed 3 PATs this year. One of those point afters was in a game against Houston, back when Indy had playoff hopes and a quarterback in a functional season. A game where Badgley missed an extra point, which forced the Colts at the end of the game to have to chase a touchdown down 4 instead of being able to tie the game with a field goal and a 3. So, not directly cost the Colts a game, but certainly had a big impact on the game. Well, the week before, and now that Badgley's with the Bills, he missed a PAT against the Browns. That if Cleveland had been able to mount some sort of drive late, they could have tied the game with a field goal instead of needing to go for a touchdown. So Badgley cost the team in both directions with a missed extra point. And then in this game against the Eagles, he gets his first PAT blocked. And after the game, Sean McDermott said it was, I don't want to say mostly, but he did talk about a really good athlete in Jalen Carter who blocked the PAT, primarily making a really good play. Now, it's a 33-yard kick. Most professional kickers in general have the ability to loft that kick high enough to where it makes it really, really difficult to block. Does that mean that Jalen Carter still couldn't get to it? I'm not going to say that. The guy's ridiculous. But bottom line, the Bills have a kicker who was available because he was bad on extra points, who was already bad on extra points for the Bills this year. In the 2 games that he's played with the Bills, you can't run that guy back out there. You just can't. You can't say with the game on the line, the guy who has missed point afters all season long, over and over, for you and the last team he was with, that can't be the guy that you put your season on the shoulders of. And I know, look, it wasn't to win a game. It would have been to tie a game. He still would have had to do more in overtime to win the game. And even if the Bills had won the game, they might not have won a division or gotten a 1 seed or any of that stuff anyway. So it's not necessarily like Badgley making the point after, or even the Bills when they went for 2, converting the 2, changes everything about what's going to happen for Bills football the rest of the year. But it might have. So you can't depend on this guy that you've seen miss over and over in that spot. Again, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That would have been what running Michael Badgley out to tie the game would be. If you were going to draw a picture or post a video of insanity in a dictionary, the Bills sending Michael Badgley out to tie the game would have been the perfect thing for that. And that has nothing to do with the fact the Bills, oh, by the way, have Josh Allen at quarterback. And I know Josh Allen wasn't good. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I don't care who your quarterback is. You can't send that kicker back out to try again. There's no scenario in which you endorse that. Even if the Bills were dominating the game offensively, defensively, like they had been the last 7 minutes of that fourth quarter, and certainly defensively the entire second half. So going for 2 was a no-brainer decision. On that topic, not going for 3 on the 4th down try at the end of the third quarter, I thought was also the correct call. Not necessarily because the kicker's bad, but it's 13-0, and you have the ball at the 3-yard line with a quarter and change to go. Kicking a field goal there means you still need 2 scoring drives just to get even. So to assume that a Bills offense that had scored a total of 3 points, if you kick the field goal there, through 3 quarters, is going to suddenly score 10 and the Eagles aren't going to do anything on offense, that to me sounds like a bad assumption. That to me sounds like a spot where you need to go for a touchdown, which is what the Bills did. And that was the right call. So the 2-point conversion to me is a no-brainer. And you can make an argument for getting the 3. In fact, I had a friend of mine make a really good argument for the 3. He's a big Iowa fan. And if you don't know, Iowa football is synonymous with some of the greatest defenses man has ever seen and some of the worst offenses man has ever seen. So when you play Iowa, it's first team to 20 wins most of the time. And the point he made was, this was an Iowa game the Bills played yesterday. And in those kind of games, it might look like you need 2 touchdowns to win, but when you are going to play so close to the vest and with so little offensive success, sometimes those field goals pile up. And taking the 3 when you have an easy one can make a difference even in a spot like that. I still think going for the touchdown was the right call, but I do get what he's saying there, and he was right. That was really more an Iowa football game than it was a Bills football game or even an NFL football game. But I still would have gone for the touchdown at the end of the first half or at the end of the third quarter. Like I said, this was not a good game for Josh Allen. And I think most people realized that watching it yesterday. Going back through some of the film today made it even more obvious. Number one, Allen is only credited for 2 fumbles in that game, but he actually bobbled it a third time. The sack he had on the first possession of the game, and I don't know if any camera angle will be able to see it other than mine, because I happen to have a really good view directly at Allen as he tried to scramble forward. But when the defender reached in to wrap him up, the ball came loose for a moment. Allen kept it and didn't lose it. So you have that fumble on top of the one that he did lose on top of the snap that he bobbled. Was the weather a factor? 1,000%. It was terrible for long portions of that game, and especially at the beginning. I don't want to excuse Josh Allen for fumbling the ball 3 times, but it doesn't get much worse than what it was like in Orchard Park from, say, 4:30 to about 5:45. It was cold. It was rainy. Everything had been soaked because it had rained pretty much from 12 o'clock straight through to 4:30. The puddles on the side of the field where most of the photographers walking just beyond the sideline were ridiculous. There were waterfalls coming down the stands, the walkways. So it was bad, and it had to be hard to operate an offense. So I can understand why Josh Allen had 3 times where he lost control of the football, one that cost the Bills possession and eventually led to the only touchdown of the game for the Eagles. But that is part one of Allen's struggles. The thing that most people kind of harped on, which for sure I think were the more important issues, were some of the throwing decisions late in the game. On the failed 4th down we just talked about at the end of the third quarter, Allen had at least 2 mistakes. Number one, the 3rd and goal play where Shakir crosses over the middle and Allen throws and Shakir gets tackled at like the 2-yard line. It's a classic mesh play. I'm sure you've heard a lot about mesh this year, right? Anybody who knows Joe Brady offenses knows mesh is something he uses. He's not the only guy in the world, but something that he relies upon. And he has to rely upon it because the receivers that the Bills have aren't really good enough to separate on their own. That's a whole separate discussion. This was a mesh play, though, that worked. One of the linebackers came across, got in contact with another defensive back, and Shakir comes wide open. If Allen leads Shakir, probably with any sort of ability to let Shakir keep running, there's a good chance he scores. Because the ball was behind Shakir and he had to kind of turn around to catch it, that gave the pursuit time to catch up and went a long way towards preventing the Bills from scoring a touchdown there. That was play number 1. Play number 2 was the 4th down play. And in a lot of ways, that was probably worse. So on the 4th down play, initially Josh Allen wants to go to his left, where Shakir and I think Brandon Cooks, it doesn't matter. Either way, the Eagles covered those 2 receivers with 3 guys. They were blanketed. The second read was Josh Palmer starting from the right side of the formation, kind of running a post over the middle. He was well covered. The third read or look was what is called an escort screen. It's really become popular in the NFL this year. And it can be a screen. A lot of times it's used as a check down. And what it essentially is, you have a receiver, running back often, but it can be a wide out, who goes wide of the line of scrimmage. Doesn't go downfield, just kind of sits in front of the sticks on the sideline and is the check down option. But in front of that receiver is another receiver that can be used as a blocker, often a tight end. So in this situation, Brandon Cooks and Dawson Knox are all the way to the right side of the formation in an escort screen look. By the time Allen gets to his third look, the Eagles had brought a blitz from the right side. So while Allen is looking for that third read, he's also in oh crap mode because there's a blitzer running in free. Not any necessarily mistake by the offensive line. These are things that happen in football. So Allen never really gets a chance to look and throw to Cooks. Now, if he throws to Cooks initially, there is still a defender and maybe 2 that are in position to keep him from scoring a touchdown. Remember, it's 4th down. He's got to score. You can't just check it down and say, we'll try again in the next down. Cooks is going to catch the ball at like the 8-yard line with a blocker, but not a guarantee he scores. I'd say it's maybe 75-25 he gets to the end zone in that spot. So I can understand Allen not throwing there. So now he's trying to scramble, do all the Josh Allen stuff, make something out of nothing, magical Josh Allen, all that stuff. In the course of scrambling, Ty Johnson comes over a couple times over the middle. You might have seen, if you're on X at all today or yesterday, you might have seen some people talking about that. And there are moments where Ty Johnson is available. It's not the easiest throw in the world. There's traffic between Allen and Ty Johnson, but there are spots in there where Allen could have thrown the ball. However, during the course of the scramble, when Allen gets close to the 5-yard line, to the point of no return when it comes to running or passing, Knox, who's the blocker in front of Cooks for that escort screen, leaks into the end zone as another option for a receiver. And by the time Allen gets to the 5, Cooks is wide open for a touchdown. If Allen had been able to keep that escort screen, that option in his frame of reference, it's probably one of the easier touchdowns he'll have all year. So Allen missed the throw on 3rd down to Shakir. He missed the option that Cooks was all the way through that down and certainly late in the down on the 4th down play. He did not throw a ball over the middle of Ty Johnson that maybe could have scored. It certainly would have been a better option than what Allen did because we know that running the ball was not going to get in the end zone. That was just the series at the end of the third quarter. Then you had the fourth quarter and the 2-point conversion. And I don't need to really tell you much of what happened. I'm sure you've seen the replay. Khalil Shakir is wide open. It's a great play call by Joe Brady. The Eagles, maybe arguably one of their worst pieces of coverage in the entire game. Maybe second best to the 50-yarder that Brandon Cooks caught earlier in the game. Even that 50-yarder, I thought the Bills did a nice job of drawing in a safety, excuse me, to allow Cooks to get open over the middle. This play where Shakir is open, this should be as easy as pie. And Allen misses Shakir by 3 yards. It's not even close. Look, do we change our opinion of Josh Allen because of this game? Do we change our expectations of the Bills because of this game? I don't think so. This was a great player having a bad game. It happens. Is there some mitigating factors involved in this? The Bills didn't run it great, sure. The receiver group remains not very good, sure, even if they had a good game this particular Sunday afternoon. But this is just something that's going to happen from time to time, no matter how good your quarterback is. And I think the other lesson to take from this is that the Bills this year have had to turn to Allen as a savior a number of times. Basically, every time James Cook doesn't rush for like $150, because the receiving group, the pass catching group, just is not good enough to make things easy on the quarterback. And I think the more that you ask of Allen, I think the more it wears on him and the more he makes mistakes. There's probably not a coincidence his interceptions are up this year from last year because the Bills have required him to do more. The offense doesn't run as comfortably with the run game being successful like it was last year, even if James Cook is going to be probably the number one running back in the NFL. This running game has had a number of times where it has not been able to carry the Bills offense. And when those things happen, it's all on Josh Allen. And the more you wear that guy out, the more he's going to make mistakes. This is not to just simply exonerate Josh and say, oh, the Bills don't give him enough help. No, he played bad. He played bad. Your MVP let you down in this game multiple times. But I think the point I want to make is, in addition to that, that if the Bills are going to demand the MVP save them over and over and over, you're asking for this to happen. He's Superman, but he's as much part man as he is super. And the man part bit the Bills on Sunday against Philly. The good news, I think, from this is that it was a regular season game that probably won't matter at all because the good chance the Patriots are going to win the division anyway. And it wasn't in 2 weeks in the playoffs. Because if Josh Allen does this game in 2 weeks, I don't care if the Bills are in Pittsburgh. I don't care if they're in Jacksonville or Houston or New England. If Josh Allen plays this game or even 70% of this game, the Bills are probably going home one and done in the playoffs this year. So if you're a Bills fan, I think you feel good about the fact that this was week 17 and not week 19. But there's no doubt that Allen was just flat out not good enough in this game. And the scoreboard is all you need as evidence of that. Allen had a bad game. The Bills put up 12 points. Only the second time ever they were shut out in the first 3 quarters of a game. It took 55 minutes for them to score a single point. Granted, they could have kicked the field goal on the drive at the end of the third quarter and scored points there. Regardless, it took 55 minutes for the Buffalo Bills offense, which for all the criticism it has taken, for all the talk we've had about how unproductive the receiving group is, Joe Brady questions, all that stuff, they're still like a top 10-5 offense comfortably by any measure. And in this game, they had 0 darn near for the entirety of the game. And give credit to the Eagles too. Their defense is really good. I said all week that the Bills wanted no part of trying to throw on this Philly defense, that the secondary was good enough in a lot of cases to cover one-on-one. I'll give the Bills credit. I think the receivers overperformed from what I expected. And their front four, as Josh Allen found out, is good enough in a lot of cases to get pressure by themselves. I really thought that when it came to the passing game, the Eagles are going to have trouble figuring out what the heck to do with the linebackers. You don't need to drop into coverage too often. You don't need to blitz them. What do you want to do? And as it turned out, they did blitz a couple times early in the first half that led to sacks and pressures as well. So the Eagles defense is really, really good. And that is this 12-point game, this not scoring for 55 minutes, this is not totally on the Bills and the offense. This is about the defense too. It is ridiculous. There's a reason why the Eagles pretty much all year when they get up by a score or two, just pack the offense up and let the defense win the game because they can. And yes, Josh Allen blew the play at the end of the game that would have won it for the Bills. But at the end of the day, the Eagles defense, again, won a game for Philly. Speaking of this offense, I really thought that Joe Brady had a pretty good day. There were a couple things. I know there was some people who had issues with various parts of the play calling. There was one series in the third quarter where he got pass heavy, and that led to a punt. There was the 3rd and 1 quick screen to Khalil Shakir that he dropped that cost the Bills on the opening possession of the second half. I'll tell you what, I really didn't have a problem with that play at all. I know people are thinking it's 3rd and 1, just run the ball. But that play is like a run most of the time, and it wasn't even a Josh Allen miss. Shakir just dropped the ball. Now, again, it was wet and nasty out, and it's more likely that a receiver is going to drop a pass in those conditions than if we're in a dome. But if you told me it's 3rd and 1, I'm going to get a first down if Khalil Shakir can catch a ball right in front of his face, I'm going to be happy throwing that. And that's what would have happened too. The Bills had it blocked plenty easily to get a first down. That might not have even been a Joe Brady call. That could have been a Josh Allen check. If that's the worst that you got for Joe Brady in this game, then I think he probably had a pretty good game, and I think he did. Like I said, that 2-point conversion play was a thing of beauty. You think about what you want out of your offensive coordinator. If you wanted to make a list, what do I want my offensive coordinator to be? I want him to be creative. I want him to work well with the quarterback. I want him to be able to adjust well on the fly. You know what else is on that list? I want him to have great money down plays. And it doesn't get any more money down than you're down 1, there's 6 seconds to go, and you're going for 2. That is the ultimate money down. And that dude drew up something against a great pass defense that had Khalil Shakir open by 2 or 3 yards. The coordinator did his job in this game. Like we said, the quarterback is the one who did not. And Joe Brady's had ups and downs and good games and bad games, and I would put him in the creamy middle of offensive coordinators, maybe more towards the top. I really have gotten to a point with coordinators on both sides of the ball that I think a lot of it is about who the players are and not who the coaches are. You look at the list of who the good coordinators are, unless it's Ben Johnson, for the most part, it's the guys who've had the good quarterbacks. Even Andy Reid, who's one of the best offensive minds that there is in the game, has had, 25 years with either Donovan McNabb or Patrick Mahomes. A lot of guys are going to succeed with those two players at quarterback. Same goes for whoever runs the offense that has Josh Allen in it. That doesn't mean that Joe Brady is not any good or any worthwhile at his job. But I would in general say if you wanted to rank all the offensive coordinators in the NFL, in a ballpark, I'd put Allen somewhere, or Brady somewhere between 11 and 18. He's probably in that group somewhere. But this was an up game for him. And I haven't studied the whole thing yet, but just looking at some of the key plays, like I said, 3rd and goal from the 7. He calls a mesh play that works. He hit another bleeping hook and lateral that saved the Bills on a 4th and long down a touchdown. And then on the 2-point conversion, he had the winning play. You can't ask for much more out of Joe Brady than what you got in this game. Does this mean that the Bills should make sure that he hangs around forever, gives him a giant raise, and he's going to save the offense? I don't know. He had a good game. He had a really good game. I think that, again, the main thing to conclude is that this loss is much more on the quarterback for once than it is on any other parts of the offense. Not the coordinator, not the offensive line, not the run game, not even the receivers. This was the quarterback who let the Bills down. Speaking of the receivers, I was watching some of Brandon Cook's game, some of the plays he hit. Again, the 50-yarder I thought was another Joe Brady piece of genius, where it was a bunch formation to the right. Cooks is running a deep post. On the outside of Cooks, outside meaning 3 feet to his outside, Josh Palmer runs a deep stop, and that route at about 12 yards of depth was able to freeze the safety long enough to give Cooks a free run across into space. So it's good coordinating. You've got a guy who's got some speed. He may not be able to win with that speed on his own. So give the defensive secondary some eye candy to distract them and allow that guy to get open. That's what Brady did there, and that's what Cooks took advantage of. Cooks did a nice job bringing the ball in on the other deep play towards the end of the game. That one was one where he did not separate. Frankly, Josh Allen, I think, kind of is heaving and hoping there, trying to catch a break. It was well covered. The defensive back for the Eagles probably should have been more physical. He was bigger. I mean, most guys are bigger than Brandon Cooks. He kind of let Cooks stand there and make the catch in front of him. Still was able to knock the ball away for a minute, but Cooks brought it back in. And quick, bigger picture talk about the receivers. As good as they were in this game, Cooks makes a 36-yard catch where the ball is totally out of his hands as he's falling to the ground. Terrell Shavers makes a 30-something yard catch where the ball is totally out of his hands falling to the ground. As much as the receivers made some better plays and were more effective, there's a good chunk of good fortune that came with that. But back to Cooks. He makes a catch in a contested situation. He gets open deep in a spot where you should get open, but he did. He makes another nice catch on a out pattern for 9 yards. It's not going to be anything anyone ever talks about, but it was good use of getting around a defensive back's leverage, a guy who had his back turned to the sideline. You see a defensive back as a receiver turn their back to one side of the field or the other, you run to that side as fast as you can. And Cooks did that on that play. And then there was also the deep ball that Allen missed to Cooks in the first half that would have been a touchdown if he connected. Not the easiest throw in the world, but Cooks had done his job. Little stop and go with some contact to get around a defensive back. This was a better game for Cooks and the receivers. And there is some encouragement there. But I'm not at the point where I think 32-year-old Brandon Cooks is going to totally change what the outlook is for this Bills offense. The bar, like I said, has been the floor for most of the year for the wide receiver group. So if Cooks clears that, cool. But I don't think it's game-changing. I will say the Bills coaches over the last couple weeks have had a surprising amount of, not unprompted, but raving responses when it comes to media questions about Brandon Cooks. For a guy who just showed up here 3 weeks ago, who really over the last 2-3 years of his career has been nothing more than a supporting bit player on an offense, he has gotten talked about as someone who has a much bigger role. And I think the coaches feel like he can be productive in a bigger role. Certainly this receiving group doesn't have anybody other than Shakir that demands Cooks take more of a back seat. So I wouldn't be surprised if he continues to get targets. Whether he succeeds with 100 yards like he did against the Eagles, I'm very skeptical about. But I do think this is a guy the Bills feel like that they can prioritize and target in the offense, and he can be better than what they've gotten so far, which, like I said, isn't hard to do, but the Bills will take it going to the playoffs. I mean, they are starved for anybody who can make a play down the field. Dawson Knox has been one of the top pass catchers the last month or so, in part because Kincaid has been injured off and on. But Dawson Knox is not a guy that you want as a priority member of your passing game. Supporting for sure, a couple catches here and there, let him block a little bit. He's a guy who can be valuable on your team. He's not a guy you want as arguably your number 2 pass catcher for the last month of the season. Cooks, I don't know if I think he's much better than Knox, but I do think he's a more dynamic, explosive option for sure. So the Bills now, with the loss, they cannot win the division. They are the first team, by the way, ever to win a division 5 years or more in a row and not go to a Super Bowl. I posted that stat on X earlier. That's from AJ Feldman, our former colleague here at News 8. Nice piece of research for sure. But it just underscores how frustrating it's been for fans to see the Bills so successful in the regular season and not back that up with at least a Super Bowl appearance. And I looked it up too. Let me go back to my research here. There have been a number of teams who have been able to win 5 division titles or more in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different teams of the 32 at one point in their franchise's history have won a division 5 years or more in a row. And of those 13, the Bills are the only one not to make a Super Bowl. The Cowboys and Patriots actually did it twice. So there's 15 instances of it happening. All the other 14 went to a Super Bowl. The Bills did not. Now, this doesn't mean the Bills' window is closed. There's still going to be more opportunities, but it does underscore how frustrating it's been. A little bit of context to that. The Bills, obviously, their 5-year division winning window is happening at the same time as another team had a 5-year or more window of their own in the same conference with the Chiefs. That does complicate it when it comes to going to a Super Bowl. However, there have been a couple instances where that did happen in the past, most notably the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning years, which happened twice, once when Manning was with the Colts, once when he was with the Broncos, where both he and Tom Brady are winning division title after division title, but they both were able to make Super Bowls in those windows. It also happened in the 70s with the Rams and the Vikings, and the other one was the Raiders and the Steelers overlapped a couple years of their runs. But it is harder to go to a Super Bowl, obviously, when you have another team in your conference doing that same 5-year run as you did. But it's not impossible, as the Mannings and Bradys of the world have proven. I'm sure that Bills fans will immediately knee-jerk to, Sean McDermott cost us again. Maybe the quarterback just isn't that good. Manning and Brady are two of the greatest of all time. Being not that good is no shame. 99.999% of quarterbacks in the NFL are not as good as those two guys. So it might just be that Josh Allen is not at that level. Close to it, really, really good, going to walk directly into the Hall of Fame when he's done, but just maybe not at that level. Anyway, as the Bills head to the playoffs this year, they are now not going to be a number 1 seed or a division winner. They're going to be a 5 seed at best. So where the Bills go from here is still dependent on what happens in Week 18. They don't win a tiebreaker with the Chargers. They don't win a tiebreaker with the Texans. So if either of those two teams win, that makes it harder for the Bills to be anything but a 7. There is a little caveat in there. If the Jags somehow lose to Tennessee and Houston wins, the Bills would win a tie with Jacksonville. So they would be a higher seed than the Jaguars if the Jags are a wild card. But the Jags are probably beating Tennessee. Maybe not. Tennessee's been frisky lately. The most likely scenario for what's going to happen to the Bills is that the Chargers will lose because they have nothing to play for on Saturday against Denver, except for a little bit of seeding, whereas the Broncos are playing for a bye. So the Chargers will probably lose. The Bills will probably win because it's the Jets and they're playing the Jets. The Texans will probably win because they're playing Indy, but again, those two bad South teams have been dangerous enough. Cam Ward and Phillip Rivers, right now, next to Jacoby Brissett, might be the best quarterbacks playing for terrible teams. So I wouldn't totally dismiss the idea that Houston or Jacksonville blows that game. The Texans' offense is not great. If you told me Indy beat the Texans 13-10, something like that, I wouldn't be surprised. And Cam Ward's been putting points on everybody. So the Jags are going to have to show up and throw a 30 on Tennessee probably to win that game. All that said, my money is still certainly on Houston and Jacksonville winning those games. If they both win, the Chargers lose because they don't care. The Bills win because it's the Jets. That makes Buffalo a 6 seed. Again, if all that happens, it makes Jacksonville the 3 seed. That's where Buffalo opens the playoffs. I think a lot of people out there feel like the Jags is a great matchup for Buffalo. I would disagree quite a bit. I don't think the Bills can't win in Jacksonville. It has kind of been a house of horrors for Buffalo. There was the 9-6 defeat there. They had it wasn't in Jacksonville, but facing the Jags in London did not go very well a few years ago. So the Jags are not a fun matchup for the Bills for a number of reasons. This particular year, they have a defense that's pretty good. Top 5 against the run by most metrics. The thing with Jacksonville has been that Trevor Lawrence has never played like a functional number 1 overall quarterback, and they didn't have a lot of pieces around him. Well, now, Brian Thomas is a fairly legit number 1 receiver. Jacoby Myers has come over and really done a good job as a supporting player. Travis Etienne isn't great, but he's still fairly electric. They've got a couple decent tight ends. The offense is working, as evidenced by throwing 34 on Denver a couple weeks ago. So while the Jags are certainly not some playoff juggernaut that are totally above having a bad day or doing stupid things, as evidenced last week by beating Indy by just 3 points and struggling that whole game, I do think it's a harder matchup. And I think it's harder than the Ravens matchup most Bills fans are afraid of. I know it's Derrick Henry. I know 220 yards, 4 touchdowns last week. Trust me, one of my fantasy teams knows very well what Derrick Henry has been lately. But that's pretty much all Baltimore is. Lamar Jackson is not anywhere close to healthy. The defense has been inconsistent, and that might be the nicest thing you can say about them. Yes, you'd have to go to Baltimore, and that's another place the Bills have not enjoyed playing recently. But of the two, the Jags are by far the team playing better right now. The only reason Bills fans are afraid of Baltimore is Derrick Henry and the home stadium, which is not nothing, but the Jags have pieces on both sides of the ball. They have a pass rushing duo in Josh Hines-Allen and Travon Walker, who aren't the Houston guys, but they're still pretty good. And they have a offense that is humming with a lot of different functional weapons. Baltimore really just has the running back. Of the two, I'd probably rather play the Ravens. Doesn't mean the Bills can't lose there. Doesn't mean the Bills can't win in Jacksonville. Welcome to the AFC playoffs this year, where everybody's going to have flaws. This is going to be a fun year because it would not stun me if the 5, 6, and 7 seeds all win Wild Card Weekend. It would not stun me if one of those teams is hosting the AFC Championship. Any of these teams can get beaten. It doesn't mean that the Jags are going to be an easy matchup for the Bills if that is how it ends up falling. I think it will be a lot tougher the closer we get to that potential game as Bills fans start to really look at what the Jags have been. And I have been someone who has been in the top of the mountain looking at the Jags and saying, I don't buy into them. I don't believe it's all turnovers. I don't believe them. You throw 34 in Denver, you get my attention. And you win that division, which turned out to be fairly competitive with what might be a generationally good defense and a Colts team that at least through 10 weeks of the season was as good as anybody. That's not your daddy's AFC South. There's some teeth to those teams. Again, even the Titans. Go look at what the Titans have done the last month or so. This is not a team that's getting rolled over left and right. Cam Ward is figuring some things out. He might be a guy, you want to talk about fantasy knowledge for last year? Stash Cam Ward in there for your second quarterback next season. So I don't know how for real the Jags are, but if Bills fans are thinking we want to be the 5 or we want to avoid the 5 because we don't want to go to Baltimore, we'd rather go to Jacksonville, I think there might be a bit of a surprise for Bills fans who think that. All right, let's get a break in here. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about the Bills. We'll talk about the weekend in football. Also want to hit on the Sabres a little bit. 8 wins in a row. Look at Buffalo cook. My name is Thad Brown. This is the Endgame. All the kids who got everything they wanted for Christmas, they call this station Rock 1. You see it as Rochester first on your screen, but you want to be cool. When you want to be cool, you call it Rock 1 too. We're back after a break. Thad Brown back here with you on the Endgame on a Monday. Bills lost to the Eagles. They got the Jets up next. Last game ever at Highmark Stadium, everybody. I think it'll be fun. Like I talked about a couple weeks ago, that loss to Philly yesterday kind of ruined some of the steam for that final game because now Sean McDermott said yesterday that he was going to have a lot of talk about how the Bills approach this last game. I don't see how you play a lot of your starters in this game. Even if you win, there's a chance you might end up the 7 seed. And I guess if the Chargers play on Saturday, right? Let me double check that. I thought they did. Oh, they did not. My bad. They play on Sunday. So the Bills are at 4. The Chargers are at 4. Houston plays at 1. So you might know what Houston's at. So if Houston wins and the Jags win, the Bills will know by the time they play that they can't be better than the 6 seed. So now you're playing for 6 over 7, which is nothing. You'd rather have a bye week. So now the Bills are in a spot where the health of their season this year would be better served by benching everybody who matters. But the pomp and circumstance of the final game ever at Highmark Stadium would be better served by the Bills winning the game and having Josh Allen go out to a hero's ovation. I think, especially with Josh, the situation his foot is in, I'd be surprised if he puts on pads even on Sunday. Of course, the Bills don't really have a third quarterback right now, so he may have to dress for that reason. But I would think that Sean McDermott doesn't want to play anybody who matters. So the last game ever at Highmark Stadium is going to be a terrible Jets team who is on backups left and right themselves because they have punted on 2025. And they did that about 7 weeks ago. And a Bills team that's going to rest guys because you need them healthy for the playoffs. And nothing wrong with that. I think it's the right way to play it. It's just unfortunate for that great building and all the memories there that the last thing anybody's going to remember, or the last game that's going to be played there, is going to be a glorified preseason scrimmage, if that. Just sucks. Just unfortunate. When it comes to teams the Bills are playing, you want to talk about unfortunate, next year, that schedule looks like a doozy. So now that the Bills are locked into second place, we know a little more of who they're going to play. Not completely, but they're for sure going to host whoever loses that Pittsburgh-Baltimore game Sunday night, because that'll be the second place team in the AFC North. They will play the loser, or the team that comes in second place, between the Texans and the Jags. Again, the only way that's Jacksonville is if Jacksonville loses to Tennessee and Houston wins. Not impossible, but not likely. So the most likely scenario is that the Bills host the loser of Pittsburgh-Baltimore. And I have no idea who's losing that game. Don't ask me for a pick on that thing. And they will probably go to Houston again next year. And then they've also got to go to whoever finishes second in the NFC West, that brutal division with San Fran and Seattle and the Rams, where the third place team might be a 13-game winner this year. So those right there, let's say it's Baltimore, just for sake of argument. Yeah, the Ravens, they're not very good this year. They might finish under 500. There are cracks in that armor left and right. As evidenced by the aforementioned conversation we had about whether or not Bills fans want to face Baltimore in the playoffs, that's still a scary team for the Bills. They might come to Buffalo, and Buffalo might have to go to Houston and to the Rams or the Niners, healthier, or Seattle. I think the Rams of the three are maybe the toughest one. Of course, that's assuming that Matt Stafford and Devontae Adams are still upright next year, which is not a guarantee. Regardless, those three teams are tough. On top of that, throw in the fact that the Bills have on the schedule the entirety of the AFC West. So you got to play Denver and the Chargers and the Chiefs. Now, you might be able to catch the Chiefs if it's early in the year without Patrick Mahomes, but maybe not. I would think the Bills and Chiefs are still going to play in November when the ratings are bigger, when the NFL can put Mahomes and Allen on the same field together. So if you're a Bills fan, do not hold your breath for that Chiefs game to happen anytime before like week 11. But in theory, the Bills might catch the Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes. And they've got to play the NFC North. So that's up and coming Chicago with Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. The Lions, who are still good and dangerous with plenty of pieces on offense and will have a higher draft pick to work with after missing the playoffs this year. And the Packers, who I don't think strike fear into the hearts of anybody, but in theory, they have Micah Parsons back next year and Jordan Love and a good stable of offensive weapons. So sitting here right now on the third to last day of 2025, that schedule next year for the Bills looks brutal. And this is not something the Bills have had to contend with. Not this year. They had a really soft schedule this year. If you took the Bills schedule and the Chiefs schedule and reversed them, and we'll assume for the sake of this argument that Patrick Mahomes stays healthy, I think there's a good chance the Bills are the team who are out of the playoffs and the Chiefs are the team like Buffalo going in, but with questions. Because the Bills got to play the NFC South, which might have a division winner under 500. They got to play the NFC North, which I don't think they can have a division winner under 500, but it certainly could be a 9-8 division winner. Let's go look. Yeah, 9-8. Okay. Regardless, the Bills might have gotten to play 2 full divisions this year with 8 teams where none of them are going to win 10 games. They did have the 2 games of bye week, essentially, playing the Jets this year. The Dolphins are going to be okay, but not great. So this has been a relatively cushy year for the Bills when it comes to the schedule. Next year, at least the way it sits right now, does not look that way. We'll be if you're someone who's into traveling next year, by the way, with the Bills, that's a fun year too, because they'll have either the Rams, the Seahawks, or San Francisco on the road. Those are all great trips. I'm a big fan of Seattle. San Fran's one of my favorite cities in the country. They will go to Houston, which isn't a super fun trip, but it is Texas. Give me that thing in December all day long. And they've got the West, which includes they're going to Denver next year. And I think, well, whether it's Vegas or LA, I don't care. Either one of those are good. So if you are someone who likes to travel with the Bills, next year is a good year to have some tickets. I want to hit on the Sabres here for a couple minutes. They have won 8 in a row. They are super hot. And you think about all the years they've missed the playoffs. There have been some years where they've had some hot streaks where they've looked good. They had one year where they opened like 9-2-1, something like that. This is actually only the second time since the Sabres last made the playoffs where they've won 8 in a row. I really felt like they've had a streak of this length some other time, but only once. Now, if you look at these 8 wins in a row, except for the very last one, the 4-1 win over Boston over the weekend, the other 7 games were all close. All of them were either overtime or shootout, or a situation where the Sabres held on to win by 1, or they scored an empty net goal in the final couple minutes of the game to win by 2. So these are all 8 games that really, via the lucky bounce of a hockey puck, could have gone either direction. When I look at, without watching it, to be fair, I haven't watched a whole lot of the Sabres this year, let alone in the last 8 games, but just box score reading, this tells me that the Sabres are probably getting some puck luck to bounce their way. They're probably getting hot goaltending, and they're probably catching a few breaks here and there that have kept this streak alive. Doesn't mean that it's not signs of improvement. It certainly is. You win 8 games in a row, especially when you look back over the history of this drought and you realize this is something the Sabres have only done one other time over the last 14 seasons or so. It's impressive. But the Sabres, like I said, have played well before during this drought for extended stretches. I'm not going to sit here and look at an 8-game win streak and say, wow, the Sabres are back. Where's my playoff tickets? I want to see a whole lot more than just one 8-game streak, especially when a lot of these games are essentially 1-goal wins. All of them, except for the last one against Boston. In large part because if it is hot goaltending, and simply the number of goals allowed would say that, the Sabres have not allowed 4 goals once in this streak. This is not a team that you would think has quality goaltenders. This team is built by what's up front. The Tage Thompsons of the world. Rasmus Dahlin is an offensive defenseman. His ability to score, at least. Not that he's bad defensively, but his ability offensively. That's what the strength of this team is. It's not the goaltending. So if the goaltending is suddenly playing well over an 8-game stretch, you could certainly look at it as, hey, give me decent goaltending and this team is going to do very well. I think these 8 games are evidence of that. But am I going to expect or believe in or depend on the goaltending to continue to be that good? For the Sabres to be a playoff team at the end of the year, I don't buy into that just yet. Give me a little more, couple more months of the Sabres playing well enough to believe in them as a playoff team. All that said, the East isn't super strong, especially the division the Sabres play in. There is an opportunity for a semi-decent, mediocre team to make it into the playoffs this year, because kind of similar to the AFC, there aren't 8 or 9 or 10 juggernauts who can take care of the playoff spots and keep the Sabres from being in the postseason. But 8 games is 8 games. It's a nice little run for Buffalo. And it is certainly something to believe in and be excited about and build on for now. And it was nice for Sabres fans that a couple of those games happened during the Christmas break. The home crowd for the Boston game was pretty cool. So we'll see how the Sabres continue to improve from here. But I will not buy into this team after just 8 wins where most of them are 1-goal games. They play at St. Louis tonight. A lot of the other part of this streak too haven't exactly been a whole lot of great teams they've played. It's been a lot of mediocre to non-playoff teams, but it's still hockey. This isn't like the NFL or even the NBA, where in most cases the good team will be the ones that do the winning. All right, Rachel Liebert is in the studio right now. We're going to do You See This. We do it every single Monday, talking about cool things that happen over the weekend. And Rachel, let me sidle you up here. Turn the microphone on. There you go. Okay. All right, you're going to go first here.
All right.
Do you want to play the soundbite now, or you want to just start?
I'll do a little introduction, then we can play the soundbite.
Do your thing.
All right. So my Did You See This? Myles Garrett, once again, did not get the sack record this weekend. They've got 1 game left in the regular season for him to get 1 sack, but Browns did beat the Steelers this weekend.
I saw that. Huge.
Huge upset. I mean, it is not great for the Steelers, who obviously had a chance to clinch and
to say the least. And for the Browns, by the way, who dropped from pick 3 to pick 6 or 7 or something like
that. So obviously the discourse after this game is the Steelers were too focused on Myles Garrett and not focused on actually winning the game.
Is that accurate or no?
I would say yes and no. I mean, Aaron Rodgers going into that game has the 4th fastest throw, getting rid of the ball in the league. This game, he got rid of it. The average was 2.39 seconds.
So even faster?
So even faster than what he went into the game. The fastest quarterback's gotten rid of the ball against the Browns all year. And, I mean, you could tell he did not even really look to the side Myles Garrett was coming at. He was just looking the other way, getting rid of it as fast as he could. So,
which, to be fair, is basically what the Bills did the week before.
Yeah, exactly.
They said, we're not even going to go that way.
Yeah, just really game planning for Myles Garrett there. But the Steelers had more important things to maybe look forward to. But Myles Garrett was asked after the game just kind of his thoughts on what did you think of Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers maybe game planning for you and not kind of focusing on the win. So, little soundbite from his response.
To an extent, I feel like they were more worried about keeping me away from Aaron than getting the win, and I think that's what came back to bite them. So they'll have to fight it out with Baltimore next week. But I'm just proud of the guys for fighting and getting this win. That's the main thing, and I'm always going to keep it that.
So Myles Garrett seems to think that they did not focus enough on maybe winning. So from watching the game, I kind of agree. I mean, it felt like Aaron Rodgers really was just focused on, okay, I need to get rid of the ball as quickly as we can. Now, they obviously don't have DK Metcalf, so that kind of changes their game plan in general. But it did seem like he just felt like he was under pressure and was just getting rid of it. He had 39 pass attempts, only completed 21 of them. So really just was in and out. And it did feel like that. Even Aaron Rodgers during the game was kind of laughing and smiling when Myles Garrett didn't get to him. But I kind of was just opening it up to I don't know if you watched the game. I don't know if you saw any of it. Like what your thoughts are. If you think that maybe the Steelers should have focused less on Garrett and maybe let him have the sack.
They lost the game.
Yeah.
So the game plan was not good.
It wasn't.
They lost to a 3-win team, and now is a 4-win team. Mm-hmm. And I do think Garrett is legit, by the way, when he talks about, I'm happy for my guys. I think the Browns are still very excited to pick off the Steelers. Mm-hmm. But I will go back to what I said. Going through the Bills game plan against Cleveland, the Bills literally played like they had one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah.
And that one hand was Myles Garrett. And the Bills didn't look great, but they still won their game. Garrett is that player to where I think he's worth that attention and that level of fear, for lack of a better term. So I think both things can be true, that the Steelers were probably right to avoid Garrett as much as they did, but then just were bad at it, which I think is a part of the deal. And also, I didn't watch a ton of it, but it looked like the weather conditions were very unfortunate.
No, they weren't good. They weren't good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I agree with you, but second question, do you think Myles Garrett will get it next week against the Cincinnati offensive line?
I think so.
I think so, too.
I'll tell you what. I would not be surprised if Joe Burrow did the Brett Favre and just slid and took a cheapy sack to give Garrett the record.
That's true.
Since his offensive line has not been that bad, they're not the worst in the league. I do think I think the Bengals, just the way they play, they're going to throw the ball a lot, so there'll be opportunities. I think he gets it. It would be a huge upset if he doesn't.
I know. He's been so close for the last 4 weeks, it feels like.
Who would be happy about that? Nobody would be excited about that.
No.
Not the Bengals, who don't care. Yeah. Maybe Joe Burrow, who doesn't have to be underneath Myles Garrett.
That's true.
But other than that, I think it would be a colossal disappointment if he misses that record.
I agree.
All right. So the thing I want to hit on is not necessarily like, hey, did you see this? Although part of it was that. So I watched a little bit of NFL football over Christmas. And the one game I did watch a lot of was Cowboys-Washington, because I'm in 2 fantasy championships and I had CeeDee Lamb in one and George Pickens in the other one. The part of the game I happened to watch was when Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt had the 75-yard touchdown run. So Netflix decided they were going to bring Clinton Portis in. Legendary Washington running back Clinton Portis, who, if you didn't have a fantasy team between 2002 and 2012, you probably don't know who he is. Good back, don't get me wrong, but not a legend. They bring him on and say, hey, we're going to talk to Clinton Portis for a little while, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's the moment when McCroskey-Merritt takes off. So all they get to say to Portis is like, hey, what'd you think of that? He's like, it was awesome. It was so cool. Kick the extra point, go to break. They come back from break. And they say, here's Clinton Portis watching the touchdown run. So the touchdown run we've seen has been replayed, has been talked about. Now we go to break and we come back and let's watch, not Clinton Portis, expert NFL running back, talk about the play. Let's just watch him watch it. Isn't that going to be awesome?
Watching him watch
it? Yeah, it was just a video. It was just a video of him watching and dancing around.
That's what the people want.
I guess. So I'm kind of rolling my eyes the whole sequence to begin with. And then on top of that, They've got 3 guys broadcasting the game. I don't remember who it was. But now with Clinton Portis on, you got a football game with 4 people talking about it. It sucked. It was just terrible TV.
Yeah.
The bigger point I want to bring up, as the graphic is kind of pointing out here, I hate the whole idea of Christmas or the NFL on Christmas. It's just the NFL using the world's addiction to their sport as fodder for them to make more money.
That's true.
And I think we were fortunate that these games this year were all terrible because I think it was easy for people to pull away.
So
and have their
go back to family.
Exactly.
And Christmas,
have your priorities straight. And I know I'm arguing with the wall here about the NFL having games on Christmas. They're going to keep doing this. The one thing that I feared watching this, though, people on social media started talking about Christmas flex. It's bad enough that, and I'm biased because I'm in the media. If the Bills ever get scheduled on Christmas, that means I don't get to have Christmas, and that would suck. But it's not just me. It's media. It's stadium workers. It's coaching staff. It's all kinds of people who get affected by this. If the NFL were to ever say, you know what? Here's our schedule. Oh, wait, 2 weeks in front. No, you got to work on Christmas now. Sorry.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, to say the least. So
they're floating this idea around?
No. This was just people.
Okay.
But it's the NFL. You wouldn't put anything past them to make $1 more. No.
Oh, yeah.
And don't get me wrong. If you institute Christmas flex, it pretty much would be to gain $1 more. You're making a ton of money as it is. You're going to get better ratings. Well, what do you need it for? You're the NFL.
Yeah.
You're gross $12 billion a year, whatever it is. So that
would be awful if they did that.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea
imagine that.
The whole idea is awful to begin with. How much Christmas NFL did you watch?
Not much at all. Like you said, the games weren't great. So it was. I feel like thinking back now, like in years past, my family's definitely watched more of the NFL. I mean, it was on, but just like background. Like no one was really paying attention.
Which is why the NBA is perfect for that. Yeah. You can throw it on in the background, check it in. Oh, the game close, cool, watch it, and then you're not interrupting family. Whereas the NFL, if the games are good and important, and for I think Detroit was playing for their playoff lives. The Lions fans, you feel like you got to be dialed into that. It interrupts the whole thing. So the whole point I'm making about, from the media and worker point of view, having your Christmas interrupted, that still happens to all the fans too. I just hate it. I just think it's dumb.
Yeah, I wonder because, like me being a Cleveland fan, I've never seen a Cleveland game on Christmas, obviously. I mean, Bills, when's the last time the Bills played a game on Christmas? It's been
they played Christmas Eve that one year.
I honestly don't even think I've talked to like a fan and been like, "What are your thoughts on this?" So.
Well, it's relatively new for the NFL doing it in general too. So, all right, I had to get that off my chest. Thank you to Rachel for listening. You're a great listener as always. Did you have a good Christmas, by the way?
I did.
Yeah,
I had a great Christmas. I see we're still festive in here for Lent.
Oh yeah, one more day, one more day. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching the Endgame. We're back again next week. No show on Thursday for the new year, but we will see you after Bills and Jets. For Rachel Leiber, I'm Thad Brown. We'll catch you later.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.